Welcome everybody to my podcast, Big Little Small Talk. I'm Megan O'Hara-Sullivan and I love to talk, but I also love to listen. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome to Big Little Small Talk. My name's Megan O'Hara-Sullivan with quite an inventive, creative guy today. His name's Don Watson. Welcome to Big Little Small Talk, Don.
G'day, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. Now, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time from, writing all that political satire for Max Gillies and speech writing for Paul Keating. So
Oh,
it's just
for sure.
fantastic.
Yeah, no worries.
That's the same Don Watson, isn't it?
Yeah, sure, that's him. Yeah.
Just
If I get a little bit of a commission out of that, I'd be really happy.
Would you? But you're not really doing that, are you?
No. I don't think if I wrote something like that, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't appreciate what I suggested.
All right. Is your sense of humour more wicked or less wicked?
Oh, pretty twisted. Yeah, being a mechanic, you very twisted.
Oh, well, we might be veering into dangerous territory
Yeah.
here. But I was recommended, or you were recommended to me, Don, because someone said he's the one who's built his planes out of bits and pieces over the years. Is
Yes.
that true?
Yeah.
Okay, so explain to me who and what and why is Frankenstein?
Frankenstein is the plane I've built from scratch in the backyard in the shed. So I'm an aircraft mechanic by trade. Always loved aeroplanes. I'm an aeroplane nut. So you got car guys, you got boat guys. I'm a plane guy. I've been working on them forever and always wanted my own aeroplane. Could never afford it. Over time, I've collected a lot of bits, scrap bits of other aeroplanes and bent bits and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, well, I just started building an aeroplane in the shed, all out of my own mind. There's no plans, there's no drawings. It's just make it up as I go along. And that's where my friend started calling it Frankenstein because it had bits of all of these aeroplanes all assembled together and repurposed. So that's where the name came from, and it sort of stuck.
I just want to go back to getting bits and pieces of aircraft. A, why would you be collecting them? And B, when in your mind did you think, do you know what, I could just kind of make something out of this, maybe like just an aircraft or something?
Yeah, well, it's funny. Like in the aeroplane industry, things are very strict and controlled. So quite often, a certain part of an aeroplane doesn't meet a certain spec, so therefore you can't reuse it. So it goes straight in the bin. But there's lots of bits inside it that's still usable. So I collect all of those bits. Over the years, I've collected bits and pieces of all sorts of stuff. At one point, I got sick of fixing everybody else's plane and not flying my own. So I thought, well, actually, I just started one day. And I'd actually bought plans to build another aeroplane. And I didn't particularly like the plans when I got them. I was like, well, I can do better. So that's where it started and morphed from there.
Are those bits and pieces that you're collecting, are they like electronics or are they like, a
mechanical stuff
rotor
like
or something?
bolts and nuts and bits of aluminium and all of that sort of stuff.
So, Don, you say that you're an aircraft mechanic. Tell me more about that. Where do you work and what do you do?
I work out at the Army base at Oakey, and I'm working currently on Chinooks out there as a mechanic and structures guy. So the trades get broken down into specific things: avionics, mechanical, structures, all that sort of stuff. So I do both, but not the avionics stuff. I'm not that clued up with the wires bit. So that's my job. And over the years, I've worked, right through from Cessnas and ultralights right through to Super Hornets and also all those things.
So tell me about the difference when you're fixing helicopters, whether you work on the AME or the LAME, so the aim or the lame, and what's the big joke about that?
Yeah, so LAME is licensed aircraft maintenance engineer, and in the civilian side of the fence, the LAME is the one that signs all of the documents and everything like that. And then the AME is the aircraft maintenance engineer. So he's got the trade skills, but he hasn't done the licensing exams and got that. And then on the military side of it, it's not LAME, it's just AME, but then there's different levels. So I've been working on military aircraft for 15 years now or something like that. So I've sort of gone down that stream. Even though I'm not in the military, I contract to the military. so I can grow a beard and whistle and all that sort of stuff. And
What's the whistling? Aren't you allowed to
well,
whistle if
in
you're in the military?
the military, they are very strict and like to march everywhere and all that sort of stuff. But as a civilian guy, I don't have to do any of that. And I
Oh,
sort
so
of
this is
tease a
not you
little bit.
whistling a tune. This is answering to a whistle.
Well, I can whistle a tune and not get in trouble with it, and grow a beard and not get in trouble. And
John, tell me about how you became an aircraft mechanic. What's the background? Are you Toowoomba born and bred?
no, I was born in Roma and tripped around all over Australia with the family. And then my dad's a lamey, so he gave me a choice at the end of grade 10, either come and work for him as an apprentice or go through to university and all. And I wasn't interested in school at that point. I'd had my fun, and working on aeroplanes and flying them was far more attractive. So I started that when I started, turned 16. So started as an apprentice, got my pilot's license before my driver's license, because you can do that, and just snowballed from there.
Is your father, he does a similar sort of work, does
He
he?
is, yeah. He's retired now, but his whole 40 years or something like that he did as a lamey.
Who else is in your family? Brothers and sisters?
I have two sisters. I'm the oldest, and then mum and dad. So yeah.
And was that sort of something that you enjoyed as a family? That wasn't just your dad's work. This was something that you enjoyed as a family, was going and
Pretty
going to
close.
aircraft shows and stuff?
Yeah, me and dad have quite a bit. The girls not so much. Then my older sister did an apprenticeship as well. She's got a pilot's license. She rubs it in because my pilot license isn't current at the moment, and hers is. She rubs that in a fair bit at the moment. So
Tell me about being underage to drive, but having a pilot's license.
Yeah,
how
well,
much did you use that to your advantage?
Oh, I did. Yeah. The first thing I did was, well, being a young 16-year-old bloke, that was a good way of getting attention
Best
from
pickup
certain
line I've ever
ladies.
heard.
Yeah, just that you lost a little bit when you had to get someone else to drive you to the airport, but after that, it was all good.
Very
And
funny.
I proposed to my wife in the plane over Moore Park Beach in the end.
Tell me that story.
Well,
We're going off in all
yeah.
different directions, but I want to hear that story.
So at the time, I knew she was the one, and I'd organised us all, and I got my sister and her boyfriend to go down to the beach and write in the sand, "Will you marry me?" And I took off and at a assigned time and flew over there, and it took me a few goes to fly past for her to notice it and for her to work out what was going on.
You kept saying, "Look down there."
Yeah,
at the beach."
in the end, I had to say that. I think there's something written in, and she said, "Hey, someone's proposing," and here I'm sitting here with a ring. Like, oh, it all makes sense.
Did you have your hands on the controls at the same time?
Oh, good thing about aeroplanes, they like to fly by themselves if you set them up. So that was good.
Right. Now, let's go back to talking about Frankenstein. How do you decide? Like you said, you just kind of, you're really living that. You're flying the plane while you're building it. In the corporate
Yeah.
world, they talk about that, but you are really building the plane as you're flying
Pretty
it.
much, yeah. The closest I've tried to explain it over the years, it's almost like reverse engineering. You got what's in your head, the finished product, and how you get to that with what you've got and the materials you've got and the tooling in the shed and all that sort of stuff. So I'd start off with a basic fuselage, and this is the shape that I want, and how am I going to do that? What do I need to do that? Do I have that material? No, I don't. Okay, I can do it this way. And then so it's a million little things all coming together into one big thing. So
but you might decide to build a big aircraft. I don't even know the names of the DC-10 or something.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's got to fit in my shed, see. So
Right.
So that was limiting. That was a limiting factor, and I got really good at Tetris at the end there because it just sort of got bigger and bigger. I got photos of it where I've got the tail jammed in the corner, and if the propeller's just parked a certain way, I can roll the door shut and not the other way. And
so that is literally what it had to do. It had to fit in your shed.
yes, yeah. So when I started with it, like it's a young family growing up and all that, single wage at the time, so money was always a problem. I always made a point that this hobby was not going to affect my family. This is my hobby. This is what I want to do. That's why I started raiding scrap bins, and I had a lot of these old parts and little bits and pieces. I'd trade my own labor for parts that I needed or something like that. So it had to do that, and that was a governing factor of why I built it that way rather than buying a kit or buying an aeroplane and so on and so forth. So then the challenges arose from there on how I was going to do that.
But what about, the whole aerodynamics and even the electronics and all of that?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that it's going to work until you
Well,
get
I
it up
haven't
there and
flown
it
it
falls
yet.
out of the sky?
It's on my to-do list. So, well, like I said, I bought plans for another aeroplane. So I sort of used some of that as a basic guideline. So the wing profile is the same as the plans, but everything else, the way it's made is different because it's a different material. So I use aluminium instead of steel tube and welded and stuff like that. And over the years in my trade, I've rebuilt lots of different aeroplanes. I've got pretty familiar with all the different types of airframes there are around and what breaks, what doesn't, how it breaks, if it, in a crash, how does it work, how does it look as opposed to something else. So I don't know, 30 years of working in the industry, you sort of get an idea of what you can and can't do. And I've basically ran it from there. So
Yeah. What's the timeline, Don? Like, what I know I saw, because we want to talk about your mega YouTube channel in a minute, and the people that have come on that journey with you, which was such a sweet story, I think. But, you said something like, I couldn't tell you how many hours I've done it because for
yeah.
every hour, tell that story.
So quite often with people that build aeroplanes, they usually have a log and count every hour. So that at the end they can say it took me 15 years and 6,000 hours or 4,000 hours to build this and all of that. And I sort of went about it the other way. I didn't want to know how long it took me. I just wanted to build stuff. And I didn't actually, when I started it, and like everything, I think, oh, it'll take me 5 years. It'll be fine. But it's double that. Everything takes longer because you're thinking more about how I'm going to do it. And usually with a kit or a plans, you've got all of the information in front of you. So you just put A to that and there you go, there's an aeroplane. I didn't have any of that, so I've had to spend more time thinking about how I was going to do it. So, we got to make the pilot seat, and then I've got to work out, okay, it's got to go in there, but how am I going to do that, and what materials do I have, and how am I going to make it in the shed because I don't have all of the big folders and all the big cool stuff. So, how I'm going to do that. So, in my brain, in my mind, it takes twice as long to think about how I'm going to do it, and then I can go and do it. And then quite often the idea changes because it doesn't quite work like that. It's got to go this way, or something like that. So a lot of thinking, a lot of brain. Nicole got to my wife. She quite often she'd see me sitting in the shed doing nothing, but you got this glazed look in my face, and she just knew that I was having a design meeting in my mind.
So, given all of that, when did we get the idea when you started, pilfering the bins at work to now? Well, how long? Is that 10 years?
I say 10 years. It's actually been a bit longer because I'd bought these plans and I started making little bits and pieces. But at that point in our family's life, we were moving quite a lot. So I had this plastic box just full of little brackets and stuff like that. And that sort of moved with me for about 4 or 5 years. And I never really did much with it from there. And then about 10 years ago is when we decided, nah, this is, I'm staying here. We're settling in a little bit, we like Toowoomba. And that's when I was like, right, now I can get in and start making a bigger part that I don't have to move around everywhere. So that's when I started building the fuselage off the bench in the shed in the house we were renting. And then
Now,
it just went from
look, I
there.
know my bell cranks and I know my jigs,
Yep.
but
Sorry, yeah.
what's the fuselage again?
Fuselage is the bit you sit in.
Oh.
You got the wings, and the fuselage is where the engine and the people sit, and then the tail hangs off in the back. So that's where everything goes around, I suppose. So yeah,
that's the real guts of it.
It pretty much, yeah,
in technical terms.
Yeah.
I'll just remind the listeners that they're on 102.7 FM, and you're with me, Megan O'Hara-Sullivan. We're on Big Little Small Talk, and we're talking to Don Watson, who is a madman building his own aircraft. He's built his own aircraft. So for all the aircraft enthusiasts out there listening and haven't yet had a chance to go and have a look, because I have to say this aircraft is truly beautiful. The aesthetics of it, to my mind, is very beautiful. What type of aircraft is it?
So it's technical terms. It's a high wing STOL aircraft, all made out of sheet aluminium. They call it a parasol wing. So that means the wing flies above the fuselage. It's only attached by braces, not part of the fuselage. All aluminium, two-seater, one behind the other in tandem, and a tail dragger. So they're the technical people, aeroplane people will understand that. So a bit more basic would be, yeah, all aluminium from flat sheet. So everything was drilled and folded and formed, and then the reason why it's polished is because I couldn't afford a paint job, and I started cleaning it because and then it started looking cool, and then my OCD took over, and here we are.
I mean, the obvious question, of course, is how do you know it's going to work?
I've got a pretty good idea how it'll work, and all of the numbers work out that it will fly. It's just how well it'll fly is the bit that we need to test.
What do you mean by that?
The wing will fly, the tail works, the engine works. The basic concepts of an aeroplane are there, but we don't know how it will behave in the air. That's what the testing part we're about to do will reveal.
How do you test an aircraft? You go up
we just
and
go
you either
fly
come
it.
up. Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
basically. So I don't fly out of Toowoomba because there's lots of paddocks, a lot of houses. So we'll find a place without lots of paddocks, and it's just me. And we'll start testing. So we take off and we fly around and see what it does, and then we can adjust things from there to make it fly better.
Wow,
and
that's
go
incredible.
from there.
So you're not afraid that you'll fall out of the sky?
No, it won't
What
fall
would
out
you
of the
sort
sky.
what would happen? Like it'll just kind of come down harshly or something?
Yeah, it'll be, so we call it rigging. So if the aeroplane wants to fly a certain angle, then you have to, adjust controls to make it fly a bit better. So you're trimming it out to make it fly straight. Sort of like, I don't know, like your car steering. If it wants to pull to the right all the time, then they adjust it so it doesn't do that. So it's the same principle. That's third dimension.
I just can't imagine how fast and hard your heart will be beating the
Oh,
day
it'll
you
be
take off.
mad. Yeah, it'll be a thing.
And
yeah.
will you take the Frankenstein on a tractor or like a tray, a truck or something to get it out there? How do you get it?
Oh, we moved it to near to Goolawah for testing down there. So we've done that already. We put it on a friend of mine had a big trailer that he puts trucks on. So we put it on there and drove the fuselage and the engine and all of that down to the airport. And then over the next weeks, I put the wings on top of my ute one at a time and drove it down, and all the other bits that went with it.
And you put it back together?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that was the first time I'd ever seen it put together, because my shed and yard was so small. Over that whole period, I've never seen the whole aeroplane together. There was just never enough room. So it took 10 years, and that was the first when we put it together. That was only a few months ago.
That is
And I'd
incredible.
never
So
seen
you
it
made
all.
these bits separately,
Yeah.
and now have clicked. What do you weld it together?
No, all rivets and bolts. Yeah.
A bit like a Lego.
Pretty
thing.
much. There's lots of little bits that you make, and they all get into bigger pieces. And the closest I ever got was I could put the one wing on in the shed with the fuselage parked way over against the shed wall, but none of the bits on it, so the wingtip couldn't fit. Inches to spare. So Tetris. I'm a master at Tetris now.
What is Tetris? Tell me.
It's just organizing little bits that fit in tiny spaces and seeing how much you can cram in there.
Right.
So
what's involved with licensing or regulation or getting it approved by CASA or whoever you get it approved by? I can't imagine they're just saying, well, you're crazy enough to build it. If you want to fly it, fly it.
Funnily enough, it's close to that. So there's certified aircraft, Cessnas, Pipers, all of that sort of stuff, and they're very strict on what you can and can't do. That's where I get all these bits, because quite often those bits are outside of the legal parameters for that. Experimental is where you can build anything you like. And yes, there's still checks and inspections to do, and I'm going through the paperwork and checking it and all of that. But basically it is, they'll say, yep, that looks like an aeroplane. All of the paperwork's there. You've done all of this. You can do the test flying in this area and have fun. and then
Wow.
you go from there. So we'll do a certain period of time of testing, about, I think, between 25 and 40 hours of testing. And then once you've gone through that period of testing and everything's all good, then they give you another certificate which allows you to fly it wherever.
Wow. And I'm presuming that you're working on getting the license between now and then, are you?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So
The pilot's
my
license.
pilot's license, I let it lapse once I started building. So, again, it's pretty difficult to hold up a family and then do everything else. And, if you got $200, you don't want to burn an hour in the Cessna, you want to buy groceries. So things sort of had to go by the wayside. So probably Christmas time, I'll get my license current again, and then we'll go from there.
Just out of curiosity, you said you had no budget for Frankenstein.
Mm.
How much do you reckon it's cost you?
I haven't kept it.
You said you did
Maybe 10
labor.
grand,
Yeah, okay,
maybe,
yeah.
because I could afford to buy cans of spray paint from time to time and bits and pieces like that. So, and lately some bits I can't make, like an engine or propeller. The engine mount I had to buy, so I've saved up for them. The last year or so, I've had to spend more stuff on it because I just couldn't make those bits, So, yeah, but even so, I think 10 grand would cover everything that I've done on it, which is pretty nuts, really.
Yeah. How much would you buy if you were to buy that sort of plane? How much would that cost you, do you reckon?
Yeah, over 100 grand
Right.
probably.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
is the sport for the wealthy, hey?
Oh, it is, and
Yeah.
that's the trouble, because it's an addiction. That's it's an addiction.
Let's just call it what it is.
It is, and so it's an expensive addiction. Avgas is $2.80 a litre, and this aeroplane will burn 30 to 35 litres an hour. So that's just simple numbers there. And then to overhaul the engine, that'll be 60, 70 grand. So things get very expensive very quickly. I'm lucky that because of my trade, I can do a lot of that myself. And if I can't, I know people who can, and I can work for them and do some bartering or something like that.
Was there ever a possibility that you could buy something and it became a fixer-upper in the aircraft terms?
There is, yeah, absolutely. It's just like cars, the same thing. There's a lot of that around. That was an option for me, but it's still, again, the initial outlay I just could not afford. So, even buying a wreck is still a few $1,000s or whatever it is. Then you start doing the work from there. This literally was the only way of doing it that I could do. Yeah.
It's just such determination too. So just to give me an idea, what's the wingspan and what's the length of it?
The wingspan is 36 feet, and nose to tail was 25 feet, I think it is, 24 feet.
And how much would it weigh?
527 kilos.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had to do weight and balance checks on it as part of getting it registered. And then we're playing around with, it's called a CFG, center of gravity. So it has to be within a certain thing. So we don't want it too nose heavy or too tail heavy. It has to be right in this sweet spot. Otherwise, it won't fly very well. And so we're just playing around. I'm a little bit, with all of the weight, all of the work that I've done, I'm a little bit nose heavy. I just need to put 2 kilos, I think I've worked out, into the back a little bit.
All right. You don't try and shave it off the nose.
No, there's not much to shave off there just yet. So
well, that's what I
we need all of the bits.
Yeah. It's a 2-person plane.
It is.
Will
yes.
you have 2 people in it when you take it for that initial
Not
run?
for the initial flight, no. For the test flight, it'll just be the test pilot, which is me. And I could get another pilot, and people will do that and do the test flights and all of that. But for me, I wouldn't live with myself if something was wrong. It's my thing. I want to be involved in that. So it'll just be me for the first have testing phase. And from there, we'll be right to go from there.
Is it ridiculous to ask, would you wear a parachute with that first... or is that well, you just wouldn't?
That is an option, and a lot of people would, but I probably won't get high enough to really use it. So the first few flights will be just a quick lap around just to see how it feels, and then land again. Any adjustments and then check everything as well. So make sure nothing's bent or broken or cracked or whatever. So the first few flights will be, they call it a circuit. So you take off maybe get to 1,000 feet, not even, and fly down. So you'll see that at the Toowoomba airport where the planes just go around and back down again. I'll do that for the first quite a few flights, just to see what it does, see what what I need to do, land, check everything, do the adjustments, go again.
Tighten a few bolts.
Pretty much, yeah. Remember, oh, you were supposed to do that.
Well, that's what I was wondering when you're up there. Will you have a little dictaphone where you're saying, oh, it's got a wobble on the, front propeller and it's got a something.
Yeah, I think it'll be that vivid. I'll remember everything. And I think, for my YouTube, I'll probably sort of have video so I can record and I'll be able to check it that way. And then whether I use that for YouTube or not, it doesn't matter. But I'll probably have something like that as well, just to help me remember what I needed to do. But I remember that I know the first few flights will be just how was it going to fly, whether it's, and you'll know pretty soon whether it's going to be, it's too heavy on the left wing or whatever it is. So then you'll know what to adjust from there.
I really want to talk to you about your YouTube because that is something quite phenomenal and quite delightful. But can you make comment, and I don't know whether you feel comfortable enough to, the helicopter that got stolen up in Cairns and smashed into the side of a building, how does that happen?
I haven't really looked into it, and there'll be a massive investigation over it. But from what I can work out, that person was a rated helicopter pilot in another country. So he's come to Australia, so he's actually a rated pilot, but he hasn't got the Australian licenses. Legally, he can't fly in Australia until he does those license checks and everything like that. I think he was working with that company, so that allowed him access to airside.
I suppose there'd be a lot of people out there, Don, like me, who say, do they leave the keys in the helicopter so anyone can come and start the helicopter up?
Usually no. They're usually kept in a building in a lockbox or something.
So they really
like
are
that.
keys to the helicopter?
There usually are, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So somehow or other.
So because I'm guessing, and I haven't looked into this, so I could be way off, but I'm assuming that the guy worked for that company at a level where he had access to all of that. And after quite a big night with his mates, decided it was a cool idea, and he had all the accesses and got out onto the apron and away he went. So very bad idea, obviously, but that's probably how that happened. Normally, especially with this day and age, we have ASIC cards and all sorts of stuff. Even if you broke into an aircraft, it's usually locked up and you can't start them anyway. So yeah, he had inside knowledge.
Yeah. I did think of something before. Once you get Frankenstein going, where are you going to keep?
At the moment, I'm keeping it down near Toogoolawah. There's an airfield down there, Watts Bridge, and that's where they had the Brisbane Air Show last year. So I'm keeping it there at the moment for all the testing. Whether I keep it there, it's about an hour's drive from home. So obviously, the closer it is to my place, the more I'll fly it.
Do they have to be in hangars, or
they don't have to be? You'll see a lot of aeroplanes, especially aluminium ones, will be parked outside and moored down. But I spent so long on it, I prefer to have it in a hangar, and it's polished and open cockpit, so stuff will get inside. So I want it in a hangar.
Sure.
So it just makes it last and look after a bit better. So
beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to 102.7 FM. We're on Big Little Small Talk when you're with Megan O'Hara-Sullivan, who is interviewing Don Watson, who has made his own plane out of bits and pieces he found lying around, and he's nearly ready to take it for its inaugural flight. Now, Don, something that I went to do some research, and you've made reference to it a couple of times, is this phenomenal YouTube following that you have. So how did all of that start?
How did it start, actually? I was building this thing, and I'd been taking photos and all of that. And then some of the Facebook groups I was in, one of them, they decided to have this little competition. Must have been a Christmas thing. I forget now. But basically they said, all right, all you got to do is download this app. It's a free app, make a little video, and away you go. So, I did that. And then it started to be a bit cool. And so that was the first time I uploaded to a YouTube. Never had any idea how to do any of that. And then that was a bit of a thing, and I never won the competition, but it was cool. It was fun. So I started doing a bit more. And then with more on Facebook, obviously, around the world, there's so many different sites and groups for building aeroplanes and maintaining, and like car groups and everything. And over time, I've started to notice a lot of people building aeroplanes don't know how to,
Oops.
which is a great thing. Quite often, the kits are built in such a way that people, they're into aeroplanes. They don't necessarily have mechanical skills or anything, but through all the information they're given and the way they're provided, they can build something and go fly it. It's they put so much effort into making that a thing to sell kits and all that. But quite often people don't really understand exactly what's going on from a maintainer's point of view. You look at it and you really need to, that's a thing, So I started making these videos and posting them on these groups just to show people this is what you can do, and just think a little bit about what you're doing. That, yes, it's all good. A plus B equals C and away you go. It's all cool. But think about exactly what you're doing, because aviation is, it's very unforgiving. So you really, a lot of people, you really need to understand a little bit more about what it is. It's really cool. And if you put a little bit of thought in, you get something that instead of just bolted together, you can actually put it together and it'll last a lot longer. And that's, just to give people the idea of start thinking about what they're doing a bit more than just slap it together and go. That's where it started. And then more attention came along, and that was a motivator to keep going as well.
Yeah. So, you're just such a natural too, Don. Like, you do all different things. You take people through what you've been doing and the progress and whatever. But you also take questions. So people
Yes,
send in questions
they
to
do.
you.
Well, in comments and stuff, there's quite a few. It's funny, like I haven't had too many bad comments. It's social media, so you're going to get the you're cool, but quite often people will say something or comment, and then but if you have a bit of dialect with them, they'll make sense. It'll make, I wouldn't do that. It's like, okay, yeah, cool, but I did, and this is how I did it. But I would have done it this way. Yeah, you can actually, because this is how you do it, but I chose this way because of this. And then you get it makes sense to other people, and other people are watching, and that, whether they're tuning in or not, but they can sort of see what's going on, and okay, so he did it because of that. I see what he's doing as well. So then they're thinking again. So that's the whole goal, is just to.
Has anything sort of, weird or funny or great, or, have you ever met up with some of these people that subscribe to your YouTube channel?
I have a little bit. The weirdest thing, it was when I was working at Amberley. I was working away on this aircraft, and these other guys came over, and we pushed the aircraft down. It was all cool. And this guy comes over and says, "Are you Don Watson?" Like, yeah. And I'm looking around like, who set this up? And everyone's looking at me like, what's just happened? And I've been watching Frankenstein forever. Like, yeah, oh, cool. This is, and we still talk now. It's really cool.
Yeah. Because I saw one time you were answering questions, and you said, "Look, I'm happy to chat and answer your questions, but when people comments in there like 'don't fly it,'
Yeah.
seriously, that just shows me that you've got a big pee-pee."
Yes.
And I thought, if you're abusing your YouTube channel watchers, how are they going with that?
Well, and that's it. Like I said, I've only had a few, and they're usually the keyboard warriors, and they want to tell everybody how awesome they are. But I'm happy to chat. Like I said, if you found something that you're not sure about, we will talk about it, because there's a chance that could be a thing. Who knows? Like, if something's happened and I've seen that happen and it failed because of this. Well, let's look at that.
Are you learning stuff from them as well?
Oh, for sure.
Are you?
Yeah. But even as a mechanic and a structures guy, I know a fair bit of stuff about aeroplanes, but I don't know everything. There's so much that you need to learn yourself or ask about, because there's so much there. You can't do everything. I research a lot about, like, how would you do that, or working out bell cranks and throws and travel and blah blah blah. It's full on. a lot of these guys are quite experienced and quite cluey in their own field. So if you can tap into that, then that makes your life a lot easier because you can find the answers that you're after.
So your wife, is
Yeah,
she
so
still on?
patient.
Patient, yes,
So
patient.
patient.
Is it a passion for the whole family?
She,
Your two boys have been in here setting up your YouTube channel
yeah,
before we've come on air. They're obviously really into the social media. Your wife's
yes.
got something called Perspective Australia. Tell me
Yes,
about
yes.
that.
So she's a school teacher by trade, and a few years ago, the COVID thing really knocked the socks off her and stress and everything like that. So she had to sort of stop that. As a part of her recovery, she loves outdoors, loves photography and all that. So she started Perspective Australia as just photography and bush and sort of her own therapy, but she'd like to, pass it along to everybody else. And we're all a little bit arty in our own little way. And so social media and YouTube and all of that is a really cool thing for us. She started doing that, and I've been bushwalking with her and all of that sort of stuff as well, and which is great. I love it, and we don't do hikes, we just wander, which is excellent because I'm not much of a hiker. So she does that, and between the two of us now that Frankenstein is a thing, we can just see, we can both jump in this thing and disappear and land on the beach and camp somewhere, and she can make all her bushwalking and I can do the videos and flying, and
So
it's a real family thing,
that's really beautiful, Don. So that was what I was actually going to ask you. What is next, or what's the why? I know you said you couldn't afford to have one, but what's the long-term plan? Is that
So
it? So that you can
originally
fly
the
off?
why was I just wanted an aeroplane. That's been my thing forever. Just wanted my own aeroplane. So I'm like I said, I fix everybody else's and they go flying and have fun. And here I am sitting here afterwards, So this is the way I can get my aeroplane. And then it's from there it's grown to, okay, yeah, now we can use this to go and do our own, YouTubes and social media and make that a thing. And not so much like cool, it'd be if we made money out of that, that'd be great. But it's not that. It's we just want to do it because it's awesome and we love our country, and we want to show how awesome that is around. And Nicole, she has such a knack. Perspective Australia, all of the detail stuff a lot of people gloss over and miss is what she picks up on and shows the world. So um, between
Beautiful.
the two of us, we can do that.
Well, I remember a few years ago, I took my mother out to Jimbo House to see the opera, and there were people there who had flown in from Maroochydore or from the coast, and they'd flown their planes in. They just
Yes,
jumped out of their planes and went to the opera, and I
yeah,
thought, it's a whole other world,
it is.
those
It
people who have
is.
planes who
Yeah,
can go so
yeah,
far.
yeah, absolutely. And the Frankenstein will be a slow aeroplane. So it's not going to be very fast at all. But that also, again, it's when you build a particular airplane, you sort of have to design it to do a thing. So whether it goes fast or whether it goes upside down or whether it does whatever it is, it's got to be to that. And quite often, it's not really good at the other things, sort of thing. So it's got to be a specific. And so Frankenstein is just to get airborne. So it's they call it STOL, short takeoff and landing. So it'll get off the ground quick, land short, but not go fast because the way the wing is made, it's designed to do that and not go fast.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
that
I didn't
means,
know there was an
yeah,
inverse
there's all
relationship.
sorts
Yeah.
of very different, all the different wings make it go fast or slow or whatever. This one is slow, but that means we can land anywhere. And so land on the beaches and go camping and paddocks and all sorts of stuff.
Is that right? So you'll be able to land on the beach,
Yeah,
like say
absolutely.
up at Gary and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Ah,
So that's the plan.
fly out to
And
the Birdsville races
yeah,
and
oh yeah,
that.
absolutely. And land salt flats and all sorts of stuff like that.
Isn't that
So
incredible?
yeah.
Oh,
So,
that
but it'll
sounds
take me an
great.
age to get there.
That's right.
So we better enjoy the view.
Yeah, you have a packed lunch,
Pretty
which
much.
brings me to one of my questions that I was going to ask you, because many years ago when Big Little Small Talk started, I went out to Clifton Aerodrome out
Oh
there
yeah,
and
that's cool
interviewed
there.
Mr. Banger.
Yes, yep.
And one of the questions that I asked him was, if you could only store one type of food in your pocket, what would you
Oh,
carry? I can't remember what he said, but his friend said Christmas cake.
Oh, yeah.
So what about you, Don?
Probably like jerky or biltong or something like that. Yeah, something like that. I think that'd be all right, I
For
reckon.
pleasure, or you think it'd keep you going for a long
Oh,
time?
I love meat anyway. So, yeah, I think a bit of both there, I reckon.
All right. I can remember this question I asked him too. I said, if you were a farm animal, which one would you be?
Oh, when we were kids, we grew up on cattle on farms and everything like that, and we had a pet donkey, and I thought he was awesome. So probably a pet donkey, actually.
Can you explain the donkey connection?
They're really smart, and they're really stubborn, and they have a wicked sense of humor and tease the snot out of anything if possible. And I think that's me.
Do you think that might have just been your self-description?
Probably,
It
yeah.
sounds like it, doesn't it? Well, what about if I said to you, describe yourself in 3 words then?
Or my wife
Stubborn,
described.
tease the snot out of someone. And,
Yeah, well, my wife described me in 2 words one time, and it was a nice one in amongst all the others. But quietly cocky.
You don't come across as quietly cocky. You come across as overtly cocky. No.
When I want to, yeah.
No. Just digressing from that a tiny bit. You said before, oh, and then my CD took hold.
Yeah.
And I think I saw you mention on one time on one of your YouTubes, you said something about your ADHD. You think that you really have?
Oh, probably it's definitely undiagnosed.
Yeah.
I think I don't want to make. I know that's a thing, and people struggle with things like that. So I'm not knocking it, you know, for sure. But I think in my industry, you're so particular over everything. It's sort of, I've learnt that, and it's part of my psyche now. Is like everything is square, everything has to be so, because that's the environment I live in. You know, you're fixing an aeroplane that's gonna, you know, so the potential for things to go wrong are huge. So I call it OCD, and it is. But it's a trained OCD, and so I think, you know, when I've been building this, it's been therapeutic. It's quite interesting. I go to work, I do a job, the manuals tell me how to do the job, and this is how it can and can't go. I have rules that I have to go by. I have quality people, inspections, and all of that sort of stuff. I go home, I can do whatever I like in that environment. I can not wear steel cap boots in my shed, and I can just build whatever. If you want to do it that way, do it that way. You know, how are you going to do that? Do it like. And so in a way, over the years, it's helped my mind relax, which is really weird. I go home and work on aeroplanes while I'm working on aeroplanes during the day, but in a different way. So let my mind free and my OCD take over. Yes, it's been a thing.
Yeah, I can imagine it'd be quite therapeutic. So maybe it's not your OCD or your ADHD, but what's sort of been the motivation? Have you ever just thought, oh, I've bitten off more than I can chew, I can't do this?
Yeah, I think, and it so happens a lot, like with people building aeroplanes, some take 20 years, 30 years, never finish. It just sits in the shed and it's just a thing, you know. So you have to do something on it every day, even if it's go out there and just touch it and think about it, you know. But you have to do something every day. Otherwise, it could be a week, and then it's 6 weeks, and it's a year, and then it's, you know. Making the YouTube videos was another motivator, because then you got other people watching, and so that helps you stir along and keep going, you know. And it gets to a certain point that you've built half this thing in the shed. Now you have to finish it because it's in the shed, and you got to get rid of it, but you can't until it's finished.
And all the cars are sitting outside.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Have you had someone, Don, who's been your greatest inspiration? A person?
My dad.
Is he?
Yeah. No, he offered me an apprenticeship at the end of grade 10, and we've been mates ever since. Worked together for years, and I know a lot of people can't work with their parents. We got along pretty well and did all sorts of cool stuff.
So yesterday was Father's Day. Did you,
Yeah.
have a little sit in Frankenstein and,
No, not
dream about the day?
yesterday. I went down the day before and was showing some other friends of mine, like they were in the area, so we showed them and had a look. And yeah, it's sort of there's still a list of stuff in my brain ticking over. I need to get this. I need to do that. I need to fix this before we can do the weigh and do this and that. And
Mm.
so it's all ticking
Yeah.
away still.
What about sort of aviation type people? Have there been inspirational type of people like that for you?
There's lots around. I can't name. There's a lot of people that overseas. There's a lot of people that build airplanes and do really cool things. So you look at them and watch their YouTube and learn from them. And
So we're not thinking Nancy Bird or
oh, for
Kingsford
sure,
Smith and all of
yeah.
those
Well,
ones. Yeah.
there's still lots of those. Even Hinkler is an inspiration. 'Cause we come from Bundy. My dad still lives there, and he's helped out in the museum quite a bit. And he's had access to Hinkler's diaries, and he's plotted out on maps flights that he's done and all of that sort of stuff. And that, just looking back, he did that back then, and he had one of his flights in his little Avro baby across from Darwin back down to Bundy, Brisbane, I think he went, or Sydney. Anyway, through the middle, his average ground speed was 50 knots, which is for modern day aeroplanes, that's nothing.
So we're
So
talking compared to
he's
Frankenstein, that's fast or slow?
slightly slower, but
Oh.
not by much. So I'm thinking that's what I'm saying. Like, oh, he did that with no help and with no modern technology. It's like, I can do that in Frankenstein and we can do a thing, So it'd be like riding a postie bike around Australia, that type of thing. It's like, we can do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Wonderful.
that'll be
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, your father
know?
and Hinkler. That sounds
Yeah.
wonderful. Now, unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Mm.
Now, do you have any interest in the royals at all, Don? Do you have a favourite royal?
I
To
haven't
name one?
tracked them that much, but I think the Queen was pretty awesome.
For what reason?
Just what she did through her whole life, like she ruled for so long, yeah, for sure. But what she did during World War II as a car mechanic and, and a driver, she did all this stuff, and I thought, no, that's in her position, I think that's really cool. And even right up to, well into a late age, she's still driving her own cars. And I thought that's cool. And in that position, I thought I like
That
that.
appeals to you, right?
Yeah.
Now, you and Nicole love a dance or not?
I'm not much of a dancer, but
Oh,
I'm
if this
with
song,
one
what's the
of
song that can't keep you off the dance floor?
the
Oh,
la-
it couldn't be on the dance
the
floor. It might be in
last.
the shed when you're doing a bit of head banging.
Oh, there's lots
or
of loud
yeah.
music going on there. But the last time I ended up on the dance floor after quite a big, it was quite a few drinks. Wild horses. Nicole's got a video of it. It's a bit wild, a bit mad, because we were all having a wonderful time.
Well, that doesn't sound like
I don't
too
know
bad.
why, but that's what happened, and we're all out there being idiots. So, yeah,
So wild horses. All right, that sounds wonderful.
it was crazy.
Now, Don, if I want to find you on YouTube, what do I type in to try and find you?
Okay, my YouTube channel is Don Watson, and if you just Don Watson Frankenstein, it usually pops up. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'll
yeah.
go back and see the ones that I haven't seen, and it's been
That's awesome.
you've just been such a joy to interview. I mean, I'm not a praying person, but I am going to say a prayer for you that day you go up in the
Oh,
plane.
thank you.
I'll
Yes,
keep my fingers.
be lots of planning will go in ahead of that time for sure.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your
Oh,
time.
thank you for
Yeah,
having me.
thanks,
This
Don.
has been great.
That's it for this week. Thanks for joining me on Big Little Small Talk. I hope you can make the time to join me next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast app.